My name is Jesse Riding. I'm going to tie an ant pattern, a small ant pattern. This is designed by Rainey Riding, my mother. I'm going to use a size 14 dry fly hook. Specifically, this is the Tiemco 531. It's a black dry fly hook, which is a 2x fine hook. I really like to use this hook for a couple of reasons. One, it's black, so it matches the black body that I'm going to tie, as well as its 2x fine shank, which when you're dealing with dry flies and sometimes some of those hooks are relatively heavy, I prefer to use the lightest hook possible, so to maximize the flotation of a fly, like an ant pattern, which typically doesn't always be the top floating one. And I'll show you how this pattern in particular does everything possible to make sure it's the highest riding visible ant that you can fish. We start by putting the hook in the vise, and I'm using 8/0 thread. Again, thread is just can be just a sponge, so you just want to use the smallest thread possible, in this case 8/0. And I'm just going to start at the eye and work my way back, making a thread base so that everything is secured to a thread base. I'm going to go all the way back to the bend. And then back off just a little bit, and that's where I'm going to tie on my body. The body is actually going to be made out of Rainey's float foam. In this case, I'm using small, and small will be the perfect size to tie a size 14 in black. Now, float foam is really good for this application because it is a closed cell foam in the sense that there's cells on the inside, but then it has a coating on the outside when it's manufactured, so that it makes a nice slick ant body. I'm going to cut off about 3/4 of an inch of that, and now I've got that cylinder. I'm always using a nice pair of utility scissors to cut foam because it makes clean, fast, easy cuts. You can also cut your finger just as easy, so make sure you're always very cautious. I'm going to cut this foam actually in half, and it's simply done by leaving the jaws of the scissors open and cradling the foam on each side to make sure it's a nice even cut right down the center. And again, sometimes you get bodies that may not be perfectly even or whatever it is, so you want to pick the body which you think is going to be best. In this case, I'll choose this one because I think it's going to tie the better fly. The tie-in point I want to be as less bulky as possible. So another thing that I can do here is I'm holding this is now kind of a half circle piece of foam, and I can take a pair of regular fly tying scissors, and I can push down into the end of that and clip out a little bit of that to minimize bulk. So now I've just got a little trimmed out of that. Now I'm going to tie on right where my bobbin is, and I just tie that on with the flat side facing up, because what we're going to do is we're going to fold that over and create the butt of the beetle, or of the ant, excuse me. I actually pull the foam towards me because if you're a right-hand tyer, or in this case, you're always pushing the foam, and the body, instead of staying flat on the shank like this, wants to start being tied this way. And sometimes you'll finish a fly and you'll see your flies tied really on this side of the shank, or off of perpendicular. So I always like to try to start tying as much as possible at an angle towards me, because by the time it finishes wrapping, it's perfectly straight. We want this butt to be even with the bend of the hook. So I'm going to continue tying until, and if you need to test it a little bit, you just simply pull it back loose, and you'll see that the bend of the hook and the bend of the butt is about the same. So we're going to be good there. And I'm going to come back up to the halfway point. This is where we're going to tie off that first butt segment of an ant. An ant has 3 segments to it if you ever look at one. So after I'm here, I simply just fold that back, and you'll see it creates a nice ant butt. And in this case, I don't want to pull the foam tight or anything like that, because it's going to crush the air sacs inside the foam, and I'm just going to pull it so it gives a nice pleasing shape. And a couple of thread wraps there, pull tight, and you can see we've created a nice butt of an ant there. Typically, ants can be various sizes. This is a size 14 for demonstration purposes. Size 16 or 18 typically is a better size probably for most fishing. Now, an ant is also black, so it's very difficult to see, and so we're going to put a strike indicator on this. But before we do that, I'm going to just use some small round rubber legs. I've already prepared them. I've trimmed them out of the ribbon form. And again, on the back side, I always use that first thread wrap to hold it and secure it. 2 thread wraps and make a nice V coming out away from me. The second set of legs here are just going to be towards me. tie in that segment area. And now I've got 2 sets of legs coming out each side in a nice V fashion. Back to the strike indicator, you can use various kinds of sheet foam. In this case, I'm using the Rainey's Evizote in 1/8 inch thickness. It comes in a variety of different colors, chartreuse or red or orange. My favorite color to see is orange on the water. You may have different colors that you may like to see, and so use whatever color is best for you. And simply just use a pair of utility scissors. You can see I've hacked this up, and I've already prepared a strip that I can use for probably 10 flies. You just keep going. And so I've already got that strip, and I've cut it less than 1/16 of an inch thick. It's 1/8 inch wide, which is perfect for this size. If I was tying a smaller size, I'd probably cut that up just a little bit. So I just simply put that in this segment, and I'm going to use the same, whatever length I want to come forward, and then I'll trim off the excess that way on the rear end as soon as I tie it in. So come up and dodge some of those legs, and tie that little spot there. And 2 wraps is all you need to secure that. Once it's there, then I'm going to move my thread up, and I simply just lift the entire fly back, and then I go to the next spot where I'm going to tie my next segment, which is just shy of the eye. Since I don't need this anymore, I'm going to trim off the excess indicator so I can be able to see that out in the water. And the next segment, I don't want to be as bulky as my butt section. If you look at an ant, it has a big butt, but it doesn't necessarily have a big thorax section or a head. So this is where I'm actually going to pull kind of a little tight, not too tight, to slide it off away from that thread wrap. And I'm going to secure that with just a couple of wraps, like so. Make a 3rd one. Now, insects have 6 legs, so this is a spot where we're going to tie in another set of legs. And if you wanted to tie them the same way as the rear portion, you could do so, but then you'd have 4 legs on each side. In this case, I'm going to use a single strand, and I'm simply just going to lay it on top of that, and I'm going to wrap, secure one side, and then I'm going to hold this back and wrap it the other leg this way so that they are directed just a little bit better. After that's done there, then I'm just going to pull this back, and I'm going to form this, and there's no finished head in this case. We're just going to trim off the excess and make that the 3rd segment. So I just use a whip finish to finish this fly. Trim off the thread. I look at it myself. I just pull that a little bit, and I just want to make a nice 3rd segment like that. And you can live. It's really nice because you don't have to worry about a finished head or anything. It just leaves a nice 3rd segment. And while the fly is in the vise, I'll go ahead and trim the legs all the same length, like so. And you have there a finished ant pattern, which is high visibility, has foam to help the body float. The strike indicator will also help you to see it in the water, as well as add flotation to the fly as well. And so where normally you'd fish an ant and it's very difficult to see in the water, you can see this one and it floats high.